give you a little glimpses what it is that I do to put together escapes. So first off, what I have is the last show that I have been working on, which will air before this one. So basically, the previous episode is right here. This is just how part of the editing is kind of done. I borrowed the editor from Pegasus, which is owned now by Spectrum. Used to be with Time Warner when I first started. Okay, so that there was not bad. It was not my worst. It may not be my best. So I am going to keep going through until I find that particular clip that I really want to have. For those of you that happen to be a Battlestar Galactica fan, yes, I use frack a lot. Welcome to this episode of Escapes. Kind of on a deadline today. I'm going to be turning in another episode this afternoon, and I will be having to do a second episode. So I figured, you know what, it's 11:45. And I have until 5:30 to come up with a half an hour show, and I figured, why not escape with escapes today? Now, what I'm going to do is show you, this is an editor that came from the Spectrum Pegasus Studios, where I work and produce these escape episodes for you. And I also have fans that are on my YouTube channel that know that after it airs here locally in the Ithaca area, that I go ahead and post so that they can get access as well. For a lot of the editing, this is exactly what we do. We go, we film whatever it is that we happen to be filming, and then we go and sit down here at the editor or at the studio, one of the major editors that they have, and they have like a couple of different options, and they also have like the studio itself where you can film in the bigger studio, the one with the curtains that you might be recognizing from the Channel 13, or into the smaller booth, again, you might be recognizing from Channel 13. I like to work at home when it comes to the editing, so I borrow the laptop. I just find it a lot more relaxing, and especially since I do have a lot of time that it's by myself at home, even though I have like 3 busy kids and my husband and a cat. You did see Kyler. So basically you go through all the film that you have. And the first thing that you're going to do is just cut all the obvious things that you don't want to have on television. So again, these were photographs that I had placed on Facebook, and this is actually a WVBR, which is where I actually DJ'd back in the late 80s, early 90s. So some of the people that I have had contact me because I've put together escapes had actually remembered my DJing at WVBR, and I love this photograph. It was me back with the records. WVBR had the largest record collection at a radio station in central New York back. Now today I happen to have, as you can see on the film, a really bad attack of So those are the kind of things that I look for so that I can try to edit them out, because they just don't flow. And a lot of times when you have some sort of a speech class, if you remember back to your high school or college days, those are some of the things that they warn you about. Now, I noticed, and I didn't realize until I found myself looking at myself on film, that I touch my face a lot, or I get all kinds of nervous, or I was turning beet red, or, as you can tell, I got this hand thing. And it makes it really kind of weird and difficult when you see yourself at first, because all you want to see is the imperfections, and that's just kind of that human kind of thing that goes on. But as you can tell, over time, it becomes easier and easier. One of the reasons that today I wanted to go with the Escapes to Escapes is because now I'm in a situation where it's all about me and you and the camera. So that I'm going to be going through and just talking and talking and talking until I get completely comfortable with the camera. So this is kind of one of those dual purposes. I have a deadline this afternoon that I must meet with a new episode, and I am also exercising, getting outside of my comfort zone and hitting a new boundary. And hitting a new boundary. It's always kind of difficult when I do all the moving around, so how do I go ahead and edit and slice in such a way that it makes sense, that it flows? And what are the kind of things that I need to be more and more aware of as I go through? And a lot of those answers come when you're doing your editing and you start to really look at the little tiny details that you don't pay attention to usually when you have your cell phone out and you're just having a good time putting some clips together and throwing on Facebook. These things take time, and giving yourself that little bit of a break that says, okay, this is all a learning experience, I will eventually get better, and a little bit of forgiveness goes a long way. And just having the courage to get out there and saying, okay, I need to stop myself from being a perfectionist at this particular point. Understand time is up. That's why the deadline comes in so handy. And just let it go. And just let it go. Because you are your hardest critic. And getting into this situation sometimes, you're out of your comfort zone. I also have been able to gain enough experience that when I bring somebody in for an interview or to review the edit, I can always tell somebody who's not used to it versus somebody that is, because a lot of times what happens is when you bring in someone to interview, you're sort of putting them into a shock situation. They have not necessarily seen themselves in HD, which is a different film quality than what you usually get with the cell phone. One of the things that helps me as I'm editing actually came from the coordinator down at the studio, and she always has on her show when she's editing this concept that that's not me, that's her. And being able to take yourself out of the equation so that you can look at yourself in a more third person kind of way. Kind of helps you find the things that you don't want to see. Now here, like I said, I'm sitting here going, the baggy eyes, you know, the bad hair day, I sound stupid. Those kind of things automatically hit. In the new building, I was very, very pleased. So this is the outside of Flynn's Roadhouse Cafe, which is kind of where I really started doing a lot of filming before I got interested in coming to the studio and finding out that being public access, that I could come down and put together a TV show. So you'll notice that there's a lot of clips that come from Flynn's Roadhouse. Okay, so basically at this point, I have an understanding of what it is that I have already filmed at this particular point where we're doing the edit. So at this point, I need to get my notes out and figure out exactly what the focus is going to be. I know that it's a 30-minute episode. I know that there's a lot of information, and I know that I could sit here and talk for hours. So how do I bring all of that down to a half-an-hour format? Well, a lot of that comes from being able to look at here, what I call my production notes, which is me just typing, and every episode that I have planned comes together on here. For example, and this is an old one, I made several copies. I made a format here so that I could keep the timing and understand where it is that I'm going with the opening and the middle and the end, so that you have an understanding when you're the viewer and you're watching several of my episodes that there is a format and that there is a way that I keep things in line. And I can just give you an example. Now, this was from my pilot episode, and I took the, with the computer, because you can do a lot with the computer. I took the basic format, Alright, and this was the notes that I had taken for my pilot episode, which was on Ryan Newton. Okay, and so I took that and then I opened it up. As you can tell, this is all the first same 30-minute show. Okay, I knew I was going to do a 40-second opening sequence, and that I was going to be doing an introduction. Now, back when I first started, and you could see from here, I was going to, my first concept was to sit in the car, and the reason that I was doing the car is when I was standing with a microphone out in public, outside, where I've got wind, and I've got people, and I've got cars and all these other things that I have to compete with, it was very difficult for me to be able to just welcome to Escapes and not sound a little crazy at that particular point. And every time I had an interruption, I was going and getting crazier and crazier as it went. So I had initially put to counteract that and to stop some of the things that I seemed to be doing that was annoying me as I was editing, was I put a cell phone together in the car, and then that way I could use my sunglasses so it would look like I was looking at you as I'm driving, and all I had to do as I'm looking down the road is kind of like turn my head from time to time and make sure that I smiled. But it also gave me an activity that I was able to do which takes all of your attention, which was in the driving. But by the same token, when I spoke at first, it was dual. It was kind of like, okay, so you're in the car and you're talking to whoever your passengers are, and we do it all the time. We're still driving, we're still paying attention to what's going on, but the conversation that you have tends to flow because you're so used to it. So that was why I had first started using the car rides to be able to kind of convey what I was going for with the TV show. Then I started from there to get more and more acquainted with the camera, with myself, with the editing process that was going on, and now I have more of an understanding of what it is that I'm trying to say and how it's going to come together. It's still not 100%, but like I said, with this particular episode that I'm escaping with Escapes, just being able to sit and talk into the camera, it's not so scary. Okay, so now I'm talking to you, you're going to see that it's all in my head as an understanding, even though right now I'm by myself and I'm just staring at black equipment that happens to have, you know, a zoom lens and a red light. But because I understand now that when I put this on YouTube and I put this on channel 13, what happens is I start getting feedback and it becomes more of an understanding. So when I'm looking at the camera, I know I'm talking to you right now. And I know that even though you are just seeing this and it will be days after I've already filmed, I at least now have it more in my head, a concept that eventually you are going to be seeing this. I also understand that I need to work on just the familiarity and being able to do things the way that I want to have them done, because we all had this perfection in our mind. We've seen TV so often that we have like certain expectations. So let's see what we have here. These are all the projects that I have that are going on to Escapes, and as you can tell, I've been collecting quite a bit. And we're just going to move that over here for just a moment because I do need to get into this particular episode that I'm going to be putting together in front of you today. Okay, let's see. Pretty much what we do is we take the SD card that comes out of the TV camera, and then I go right ahead and transfer that over to my hard drive. And as you can tell, it takes quite a bit of time to put together. So while that is actually transferring over there, I wanted to show you that I did put together a basic format of escapes. This is just something to kind of run on. I did 4 weeks of training for the equipment that is supplied by Spectrum over at the Pegasus Studios right on West Green Street in Ithaca. One of the things that I found that was very helpful is for me to actually write down what it is that I'm doing. And so I actually have a notebook for escapes. And as you can tell, I put down all my ideas and contact information for the people that I have had filmed for escapes. As I put out the shows that you see, this is kind of where it kind of starts. So while that is busy getting transferred over so that we have something to look at and go through, I wanted to show you that after my 4 weeks of training on just basics, the equipment, the editor, the TV camera in and of itself, how the different lightings work, how the different microphones work, how the tripod works, then it comes down to your own creativity. And for me, when I had the little project being put together in order to do this, became kind of exciting. I thought, why not escapes? Why not go? There's so many places to go around here. There's so many events that are going on. And with Facebook, I'm always finding out some place to go and people to talk to. And I thought, escapes, why not? Make it a half-an-hour show so it doesn't take all that much time out of your day to just have a little bit of a break as I go a couple hours or maybe a couple of days someplace and just kind of condense it down for you. I put together a basic format of escapes knowing that in advance that I wanted a 30-minute show, which actually ends up, as you can tell, a little bit less so that the station is able to put in any identifiers that they want to put in or any advertisements for some of the co-producers that I have at the studio. I also found that the format not only helps with the editing process, but it also helps when I go out and film, because now I have more of a sense than I did before. And you'll notice with the previous episodes that you can find on my YouTube channel under Angela Escapes, my previous escapes are on there. And one of the things that you'll see is I'm getting better filming with a purpose and editing with a purpose, just having the basic format. Anybody can go down to the public access television station in your local area and sign up. Get the classes, borrow the equipment, and pretty much let your creativity and your interests come through on television. So basically I get into the Adobe Premiere Pro, and I'm going to be starting a new project right here in front of you, Escaping with Escapes. And we just go right ahead, and pretty much this program will walk you right through everything you're going to do. As you can tell, everything is blank, so all I need to do is come up here. And this is where I put all the material. The film footage, the photographs, anything that I have going goes on here. And the first thing that I always do when I start off is actually go in for my templates, okay? And I load that. And then I just take that over to here. This is called a timeline. And let's just take a quick look at that. Alright, so always the number one rule constantly when you're starting to do any kind of project like this is to save any changes that you have made. And one of the changes that I have made is I've gone over, found my template, which is really my show opener that you have seen from episode to episode. And I'm going to be using this for probably until about December or January. Probably going to start the new year with something a little different. Now, every time that I have loaded this, as you could tell, all these numbers here need to come down. There's no point in having this too loud. The comfort zone for the television show is up around 12, so I make that adjustment. Okay. Now, when I had first started and I had put together the opening, I had used photographs that were anywhere between a year and a half old, and some of them were very current within the year that I had put together, and they were just photographs that I had on Facebook, and I just pulled them together in order to do the opening. I had nothing else to work with at that particular time that I had done the training and started this whole project. But as you can tell, as I started getting some experience, I started putting some of the more current photographs in. And this is our beautiful Cayuga Lake. And just as an example of what I was just saying, this was from the episode of Escapes to the Mayfair. And there was me doing my first outside interview. This is from the New York State Fairies Festival, which is an upcoming episode that I'll be showing when I get done editing and deciding how many shows it's actually going to be. As you can see here, I have Mr. Clean. Christopher Church is a co-producer for Channel 13. He does what's called the Mr. Clean Show. His YouTube channel has episode 119, which will actually give you a little bit of an insight. He had brought my son, Sean, and myself into the studio to kind of show us around and show us what the equipment was. He had actually asked us to be his camera people for his episodes for the Mr. Clean Show. This is how I got involved at Pegasus, and it was kind of funny that he aired that. We didn't actually realize that it was material that he was going to be using. We were kind of presented with the concept that we were just kind of sitting down and getting used to the camera and the microphones and the studio around. So that's probably why you noticed that we were incredibly relaxed throughout that particular episode. But it is kind of fun. I was a school bus driver at the time, and I got on the school bus, and some of the kids had come up and said, "I saw you on television." And I was like, "What?" Thank you, Chris. Okay, so when we get here, you'll see that I always start off with a blank spot. And it does say produced by Angela Nagy, which is me, even though on Facebook and on YouTube I go by Angela Escapes. So it's easy for people to find my shows. So at this particular point, we go on the timeline. And we're going to be putting in that this episode is escaping with escapes. And I have to go right into where it micromanages. And I'm just going to go back a few frames. Because I don't want to waste any precious second. Like as you've seen, this is a 30-minute episode with escapes, but it technically goes a little bit less because when they're airing it on Channel 13, my show airs Friday nights at 8 o'clock and Saturday nights at 7 p.m. I always run a little bit less. The comfy zone is 28 and a half minutes, but I tend to run either direction, which is fine because the studio actually has these little clips that they can put in to fill the rest of that 30 minutes. The big thing is to give them a little bit of room in order to do that because there are other producers and the show would like to have its station identification time. So like I said, we don't waste this out. And as you can tell, it does take a little bit of time. So right here, okay, is where I'm going to be putting what I need to put. And again, we go ahead and we save. Now up here, what we're going to do that gives me a whole lot of time to work with is I'm going to make an actual file that I have for my Word boxes. Because every episode I have to give certain information. It just kind of helps with the flow and for the understanding. So as you can tell, I'm just going to go right ahead, hit into that, and today we're escaping with escapes. Want to thank you for joining me with this escape. As I said before, it's a wonderful little exercise for me to figure out how best to use the camera, how best to do the editing, and let you have a chance as my fans to see how things are actually going.